meeting you. I'm so excited. I'm glad.
Please feel free anytime to reach out if you need information, and I might reach out to you just when I need advice from the student side of things.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Great. It's great to meet you. Hi. I'm Joya. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I apologize that we haven't reached out to you guys yet because I was just waiting to make sure we spoke with people.
But no worries.
This happens itself, but not we're all confusing. But Emily and I want to get together with you guys just to walk through the meeting, answer any questions,
That sounds great. I can reach out to everyone later on. Hi, it's nice to meet you. I'm Zoya.
Nice to see you, Moran.
You all. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Any virtual folks you have? 3 virtual?
Yeah. Three. One is
Here for some stuff too, but I missed the preamble.
The dates?
Wow. Let me tell you
down if you want.
I
don't like.
It's so nice to see you.
Well, I haven't got a chance to sit to you now. I don't know what's going on. I know the other day, my wife and I went to some state park, but I didn't have the single people. Yeah, so in that sense, the phone was working.
Well, but I also had a meeting with some of the I don't know if
All right, good evening, everybody.
Recording in progress.
Good evening, folks. I'm going to call to order the October 21st, 2004 meeting of the Newton School Committee. We are going to start this evening with one of our students, Dimitri Ricciardi from Franklin, leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. There is no obligation to participate, but for those who would like to, please stand. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you very much, Dimitri.
Wonderful job.
All right, we have 12 folks in the room who have signed up for public comment and 3 virtual speakers. We usually like to limit this to a half hour, but we'll hear all 15 tonight. So if maybe we'll start with the folks in the room, which will start with Christine Walsh and followed by Vanessa McMahon. You have 3 minutes to make your public comment. If you could please start by saying your name and address And after 2.5 minutes, Emily will give you a 30-second warning.
Good evening. My name's Christine Walsh. I live at 61 Newton Street in Belmont. I've worked in the Newton Public Schools since 2002. I was at the bargaining table in the fall of 2018 when the NTA and the school committee bargained the contract terms for the implementation of full-day kindergarten. The NTA came to the table with an ambitious proposal to support a successful full-day kindergarten transition. And we gave up many things in the course of negotiations. The one item that we stood firm on was that there had to be a full-time teaching assistant in every kindergarten classroom. The superintendent's plan for full-day kindergarten included full-time teaching assistants in every classroom. The mayor committed additional funding to the operating budget for full-day kindergarten. The only significant cost associated with moving forward with full-day kindergarten was the cost of these teaching assistants. We brought kindergarten teachers to a bargaining session. They told the school committee how important the aides would be. The school committee told them, the aides are part of the plan. We won't cut them. You can trust us. But there were kindergarten teachers who had been there before, times when the district had promised support and then pulled it back. The aides are too important, they said. We need more than your word. We need you to put it in the contract. And the school committee agreed, and they put it in the contract. For 4 years, we had full-time aides in the kindergarten classrooms. Then, in the spring of 2023, your mayor did not provide enough funds for the schools. We told you not to cut the kindergarten teaching assistants. The contract requires them. You cut them anyway. We grieved your action. We took it to arbitration, and the arbitrator agreed with us. Our contract requires full-time kindergarten teaching assistants in every classroom, but still, you have not reinstated them. We have been through a difficult few years in Newton.
You have 30 seconds.
There's talk of rebuilding trust, but how can trust be rebuilt when you refuse to honor your commitments? When you violate the contract knowing that the wheels of justice will turn slowly for us as we seek enforcement? When Mayor Fuller, who's not here, continues to brag about her stewardship of the Newton Public Schools, even though she has left them underfunded for the last several years, while at the same time amassing heaps of free cash at the end of the fiscal year. Thank you.
Thank you. Folks, if we could please hold the applause so we can get through our agenda tonight, that would be appreciated. Next is Vanessa McMahon, followed by Kim Turgeon.
Good evening. My name is Vanessa McMahon, and I reside at Bunker Hill Street in Charlestown. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. I've been a kindergarten teacher at Burr Elementary for 18 years. I've only ever taught kindergarten, and while each day can be a wild and crazy adventure, I can't imagine doing anything else. I feel lucky that I get to be the teacher who will instill a love of learning, a belief in themselves, teach them valuable social emotional skills that will help set the tone for their future years. And while kindergarten has changed drastically over the past 18 years, what hasn't changed is that these young learners are only 5 and 6 years old. And I want you to remember that. These kids have been on the planet for 5 or 6 years. When Newton implemented Full Day K in 2019, a robust program that focused on social emotional skills, play, and academic rigor was planned. It allowed more time for young students and prevented students from feeling rushed and hurried. The agreed upon plan for Full Day K demonstrated Newton's understanding of the realities of a developmentally appropriate curriculum with a strong focus on social emotional learning, and appropriate pacing, and pedagogy needed for these young kids. This change to Full Day K meant the job of the K teacher was changing and would undoubtedly be more challenging, demanding, and time and labor intensive. And to achieve this successful full day program, it was understood and agreed the need for full-time aid aides was clear and crucial. The school committee supported and agreed that K teachers had a right to an assistant due to the huge change and increase in our workload, responsibilities, and attention needed for the kids. They voted on a contract that would add these aides to our rooms. The role of the K-8 is invaluable. They provide essential support, helping with transitions, managing individual student and classroom needs, supporting small group instruction in all content areas, and offering one-on-one attention to our young learners to ensure all of their academic, behavior, and social needs are being met. The impact of these aides being cut has been devastated. This cut came at a time when the academic demands on kindergartners has increased and their need for social emotional support has never been higher. The absence of a full-time aide means we can no longer provide the same level of attention and time on learning that was possible. Many things have been compromised, including one-on-one attention, extra emotional and academic support, and safety. We love and want the best for our kids. We want to foster their independence while helping them be the best they can be.
You have 30
We want to be
seconds.
available to help with tying shoes, fixing Velcro and sneakers, putting Band-Aids on, and giving extra hugs while giving them an outstanding education. But it comes at a cost to them and us. Last year, it was decided by an arbitrator that the school committee had violated the contract when they cut the roll of the aides. Unfortunately, that was appealed, and here we are waiting again. I ask you to please stop wasting time, honor the contract, and restore our aides. And I'll remind you, we are talking about our youngest learners. Do the right thing, please.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kim Turan, followed by Elizabeth Ross Del Porto.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak. My name's Kim Turgeon. I reside at 5 Thayer Street in Northborough, Mass., and I've been a teacher at Mason Rice for 23 years. And I'm here to discuss the critical promises that were made when our district transitioned from modified full day to a full day program. At that time, the school committee assured us that this change was designed to improve the kindergarten experience for both students and teachers. These promises included specific support structures to help ensure the success of our youngest learners. One of the key commitments was providing full-time kindergarten teaching assistants in classrooms with 14 or more students. This support was supposed to help meet the diverse needs of our kindergartners, including their social, emotional, and academic development. However, we're now seeing a breach in this agreement, with classroom aides arriving at 8:10 and leaving as early as 11:20, well before they can make a lasting impact on the day's learning. While we state in Newton that we believe in early intervention and recognize its importance in laying the foundation of long-term success, the decision not to provide classroom aides in Newton contradicts this commitment. Social and emotional learning is vital to academic success, and you will see the ramifications later on in high school if it's not met now. Especially at our youngest age, and having classroom assistants and extra is more than just having extra hands. It's about turning early intervention from theory into practice. Without this support, we are not fully nurturing the individualized environments that promote academic and emotional growth, despite claiming to prioritize these values. Without the full-time presence of these assistants, we lose out on the ability to provide that much-needed early intervention and individualized attention. Our children miss out on vital social-emotional learning experiences that are the building blocks of future academic success. When these supports are reduced or taken away, it's our students who suffer the most. They deserve to have the full attention and support that was promised to them. And it's time to hold the district accountable to those commitments so that we can continue to build a strong foundation for their future and for Newton. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Elizabeth Ross Del Porto, followed by Mike Zillis.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Ross Del Porto. I live at 13 Hawthorne Street in Watertown. Hello again. Other folks will speak tonight about the many aspects of the kindergarten aid situation, about the fact that the school committee violated its contract with the Newton Teachers Association, about the fact that an arbitration decision to settle this issue has already happened, about the school committee's inexplicable choice to appeal that legal decision, about the negative effects of reduced kindergarten aid hours on some of our youngest, most vulnerable students. My comments tonight stem from my own curiosity about the prevalence of full-time kindergarten aides in the Commonwealth. So I called some schools. And I put out an all call to members to check in about their own hometowns. The results are not exhaustive, obviously, but pretty interesting. The following cities and towns employ full-time kindergarten aides: Needham, Wellesley, Belmont, Concord, Carlisle, Arlington, Weston, Sharon, Andover, Bedford, Wayland, Natick, Framingham, Medford, Somerville, Dedham, Canton, Cohasset, Medfield, Milford, Plainfield, Linfield, Norwell, Duxbury, Cambridge, North Reading. Boston apparently has a lot of systems, but many, if not most, have K1 and 2 classrooms with full-time aides. Watertown, I say with pride, that's my town. Reading, Brookline, and I need to give a special shout out to Brookline as the apparent gold standard, as they have full-time aides in kindergarten and first grade. Go Brookline. And in the interest of fairness, I also discovered some cities and towns who do not have full-time kindergarten aides. Lexington, although I have to say the answer from that teacher was, and I quote, "Nope, it's awful. It has created huge safety issues. Inadequate support creates unsafe schools." Indeed. Lexington, Melrose, Waltham, and Newton. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Mike Zillis, followed by Sue Cohen.
My name is Mike Zillis. I'm a 28-year educator in the Newton Public Schools, a 38-year teacher, and I live at 39 Nonantum Street in Newton. I want to start with a story. I began my career as a teacher, teaching as a professor in college. I was a teaching fellow at Boston College, had full responsibility for 3 classes for 6 years. Then I was a teaching assistant at Harvard as a TA in a number of different classes. And then I was a lecturer for 3 years in the College of General Studies at Boston University. And then I made the decision that I did not want to do a national search for a job and that I wanted to teach K to 12. And I got a job as a substitute teacher in the Boston Public Schools. And my first assignment was to teach a bilingual kindergarten class. The classroom teacher was going to be absent for the first week of school. I'm like, holy shit, I've never done this.
The setup.
I mean, yeah, and guess what? It went swimmingly well because the aide in that classroom had been working with that teacher for 15 years. And she knew exactly what needed to happen, and all I needed to do was speak Spanish nicely to the parents. And it was phenomenal. It was a phenomenal experience and a phenomenal introduction to teaching. I loved every minute of it. But it was because of that aid that that classroom worked. Chris said that we came forward with an ambitious proposal for kindergarten aides. Our ambition when we came forward with that proposal was to create a model. Elizabeth has told you all the districts that have kindergarten aides. We wanted ours to be a model that others would emulate. We had in our imagination that a kindergarten aide should work 40 hours a week, because there should be a good 6 to 8 hours a week that they have to plan and collaborate with their classroom teacher.
Mike, you have 30 seconds.
We felt that that kindergarten aide, that position should be a real gateway into other teaching positions, that you should have the respect of being a co-teacher in that classroom, and that over time, that model could be carried over to first grade and second grade. that would have a lasting impact on how our children are educated in Newton that would carry over for those children for all 12 years of their education. We came forward with ambition. And what we came out with was a contract for kindergarten aides.
Your 3 minutes is up, Mike.
Thank you. We need those aides restored now.
Thank you. Next, we have Sue Cohen, followed by Eric Ritter.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Susan Cohen. I reside at 124 Mount Vernon Street, West Newton. I have a question. Why did the school committee eliminate the kindergarten aide positions? I am befuddled as negative consequences have occurred from this egregious act. To begin, the school committee violated the NTA contract, which is a legal binding document. According to the NLRB, once a contract is in place, neither party may deviate from its terms without the other party's consent. I do not recall being called back to the table to discuss the school committee's desire to deviate from the contract by not hiring kindergarten aides. This act has impacted my trust in the school committee, which is troubling because one of NPS's goals is to build back trust that was lost last year, but breaking the contract just goes against this goal. By the way, as a Newton resident, I would prefer my tax money go towards paying for kindergarten aides rather than the law firm from last year that the city is still using to defend the K cuts and which also caused a plethora of stress during last year's negotiations. So, what exactly does a K aide do? Do they really support K students' social and emotional development and mental health? Let's take a quick look. According to learn.org, though some may think a kindergarten teacher's assistant doesn't help much and there's no need for the position, studies demonstrate otherwise. According to Eric, students at 3 different schools were evaluated before and after having a kindergarten teacher's assistant for 6 weeks. Results showed that while the teacher's assistant was present, more small group activities took place, each child received more individual attention, the classroom ran better, students' language development increased, children interacted with one another more often, teachers had more time for observation. Please take note of the aforementioned word observation. By removing the K aides in Newton, the district also removed the critical assistance of anecdotal observation that greatly contributes to early identification of students with potential social, emotional, or mental health issues. Big mistake, in my opinion. According to the CDC, researchers suggest that children's experiences, even in the earliest stages, affect their social, emotional, and behavioral development. Supporting students' social, emotional, and behavioral development at early ages may mitigate the need for long-term services and supports, which can be very costly to the district. As the Baker Center recommends, identify and intervene early. Early interventions are associated with enhanced educational or developmental performance, decreased need for special education, fewer disciplinary encounters, increased engagement with school, and elevated rates of graduation. Kindergarten aides, to me, are the perfect solution to helping K teachers and the district identify and intervene early. In conclusion, I look forward to reading responses to my original question. Why did the school committee decide to eliminate the kindergarten aide positions? Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Eric Ritter, followed by Julie Fairlaw.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Eric Ritter. I live at 70 Chiswick Road in Brighton. I teach K-5 music at Williams Elementary School, and I'd like to start my comment the same way that I start most of my lessons, by inviting everyone to close their eyes and take a calm, quiet breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. So I'm here obviously to encourage the committee to drop its appeal of the decision to reinstate kindergarten classroom aides. This is my 7th year teaching music in Newton. It's the first real teaching position I got when I was 24 years old, and I have truly grown to care for this job and my school community deeply. As you can imagine, I wasn't the best teacher when I was 24 years old. I would do this thing where I would try out some sort of classroom management system one week, and if it didn't work, I'd try out a different one the next week, which is not how it works. Like practicing an instrument, there are no magical shortcuts, and teaching, as we all know, is a practice. In French, they have a slightly different word for practice. They call it répétition, repetition, which is something you have to do a lot as a teacher. Repeat yourself a lot as a teacher. And that's fine. We're all at peace with that. Kids need consistency, and anyone who teaches young children will tell you that the job is about 10% content and 90% just teaching them how to be decent people. And over the years, I've refined my music class rules to just 3. Don't talk during the music, raise your hand, keep your body safe. I quiz them every week at the start of every class for at least the first 2 months of school. I see kindergartners for a half an hour a week. My time with them is so precious, but these things cannot be rushed. They plant the seeds for the next 5 years in my class. And I like to think that I'm a much better teacher than I was back then, but when I started, we did have kindergarten aides, and when I look back at those scrawled out lesson plans, we were able to do a lot more. There's no downtime in my lessons. I'm on stage performing the whole time, like other teachers. When I start the class with a calming breath, that's because I literally forget to breathe when I'm teaching. I'm singing, I'm moving, I'm listening, but at the same time, I have to be scanning the room to make sure that my expectations are being followed. Every time I have to stop singing and playing to redirect a kindergarten, the whole class has to stop playing and work on expectations. You're meant to play music, not work music. It's really not complicated with these kindergarten aides. The teachers set up the systems that then require consistent follow-through so that we can actually teach the content that our kids need to learn in the fun, playful ways that we're trying to develop in our curricula. I'm not exaggerating when I say that an extra adult in the room to just enforce these simple systems that we set up can literally double the amount that we can teach in a lot of classes. All it takes is a quick tap on the shoulder or a step outside the room to review, and we can avoid stopping all the play, all the learning, in many cases to draw much more attention to a behavior than it really merits, right? We don't start in kindergarten. If we don't start, then we are handicapping ourselves for every subsequent year and teaching kindergartners that school means less play and more work. So it seems simple, but these are seeds that we're planting. And we have a song that every one kid learns at Williams. It goes, inch by inch, row by row, gonna make this garden grow. Gonna mulch it deep and low, gonna make it fertile ground. Inch by inch, row by row, please bless these seeds I sow. Please keep them safe below till the rain comes tumbling down.
Thank you. Next comment is Julie Fairlaw, followed by Enrique Rosero.
Hi, my name is Julie Ferland. I live on Moran Street in Dedham, and this is my 19th year teaching kindergarten at Horseman School. When the school committee agreed to full-time aides in kindergarten, the agreement was because the school committee, like everyone else, realized that having a full-time aide in all kindergarten classrooms was a wise decision on many levels. What changed? At the time, the school committee and everyone else recognized that this investment in our youngest learners was worth the expense. What changed? At the time, the school committee and everyone else knew that in order to create the best possible outcomes for youngest learners, having 2 adult professionals in the classroom would be crucial. What changed? Since the guarantee decision was made, there is no evidence to suggest that having 1 adult professional in the classroom is beneficial. What changed? We all know what has changed, the misperception of limited resources. Please be aware who is most affected by this broken promise, our youngest, newest learners in Newton Public Schools. I'm here tonight to urge you to restore the full-time kindergarten aides that were guaranteed in our contract. Going back on this agreement has many consequences, but most importantly, it negatively impacts our instruction and academic achievement of our students. Kindergarten parents may not be aware of this because as dedicated teaching professionals, we work tirelessly to make kindergarten as positive and magical as possible for every student. But our own personal and professional efforts can only do so much to make up for these shortfalls. Since last year when K-aides were cut, students have not been receiving the support they need in many different areas. For example, the lack of aid support means less individualized teaching and instruction time. Students come to kindergarten with a wide range of skills. In Newton, we pride ourselves on giving students the support they need, meeting all students where they are and moving them along. Without full-time kindergarten aides in all classrooms, this is nearly impossible. Everything takes time in kindergarten. Everything takes even longer when there's only 1 adult supporting kindergartners, taking away from essential instruction time. Instruction time left may be less effective because students feel rushed or otherwise unable to focus on their learning. If you've never been in a kindergarten classroom, you could not understand the number of transitions that happen throughout the day, maybe about 20, and the amount of support that students need due to their age and maturity. Also, there are a number of students who are experiencing school for the first time when they enter kindergarten rooms. Importantly, transitions in the classroom are often when students may need a quick check-in or break to help regulate their body or emotions. Without a K-aide, these students often cannot receive these small but invaluable moments of support that help keep them engaged and feeling connected.
You have 30
Without
seconds.
aids, everything has to be done for the whole class at the same time, becoming a whole group event. The impact of this may seem small, but it quickly adds up. In fact, with lost time due to whole class transitions with only one adult, let's say about 2 minutes during each transition, which means at least 30 to 40 minutes of lost instructional time per day. In a school year, that would be over 90 hours, about 3 weeks of lost instructional time. Kindergarten teachers work tirelessly, passionately, creatively to advocate for your children, our children, Newton's children, the future of Newton. We implore you to restore the full-time kindergarten needs that were guaranteed in our contract and help us achieve Newton's core value of high academic achievement for all students. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Enrique Rosero, followed by Wendy Murphy.
Good evening. I'm Enrique Rosero at 19 Garland in Newton. I'm an NPS parent and I'm a resident of Ward 6, unfortunately represented by Mr. Paul Levy. Mr. Levy stands as one of the 4 representatives in the contract negotiations subcommittee, I believe, directly contributed to the breakdown in communication and the botched negotiations that left these educators no chance but to strike. Paul Levy wrote a book entitled How a Blog Held Off the Most Powerful Union in America. So we know he's a scab. What I now know too is that he's also a coward. He's not here to face these educators or his own constituents. It's way past time that we get better representation in this school committee. Paul Levy, your time is up. School committee members, please honor the contract, abide by the arbitration decision, stop wasting our money in lawyers, and restore kindergarten aids. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Wendy Murphy, followed by Courtney Yakovanis. Apologies for probably butchering that.
I'm here on a different issue. My name is Wendy Murphy. I'm an attorney specializing in the prevention of violence against women and children. I am a law professor at New England Law Boston for more than 20 years. I'm here representing one of the families of the situation that led to the indictment of one of your bus drivers recently for kidnapping. I think we all know that children, especially children with special needs, are at high risk for abuse, that people who want to harm children look for employment and volunteer opportunities that give them access to children. An enormous amount of money is made from dark industries that exploit children, and that the best way to protect children is to ensure that the people around them are safe. I'm here to emphasize that this situation was preventable and not enough is being done now in Newton to ensure that it doesn't happen again. 2 points around the hiring of drivers and the video monitoring of the buses. Newton has used JSC, the company involved in this matter, for many years to transport children. JSC hires the drivers, but Newton defers to JSC's hiring policies, which require only a CORI and a SORI check, both of which are inadequate to protect children, because the vast majority of people who harm children have no criminal records at all and are not on the sex offender registry. 90% of adults who harm children are never arrested, much less prosecuted, convicted, or placed on a sex offender registry. Drivers should be subjected to more rigorous screening standards that focus on character, employment history, and an applicant's motivation to work with children. Experts in the field have developed effective tools for screening out applicants that pose a risk of harm to children. Regardless of criminal history, Newton should require them. Second point, JSC buses have cameras that record video during the ride, but until last May, the cameras would turn off when the bus turned off. So a driver who wanted to harm children knew that shutting off the bus would shield them from detection. This policy was changed last spring after this situation came to light, such that video cameras now stay on for 15 minutes after the bus is turned off, but this isn't good enough. Superintendent Nolan said more than 15 minutes is impossible because running the camera will drain the bus battery. This doesn't make sense technologically, but even if it is true, if the current model of video camera being used does drain the battery, then use cameras that can keep running on their own batteries. On a related note, we know that for many years there were no cameras on these buses. When were they added? Why were they added? Did something happen to a child that made JSC add cameras?
You have 30 seconds.
The man who was indicted in this case worked for JSC for 12 years. For how many years did he have access to children without any cameras on his buses? Parents of all children exposed to this man have a right and need to know. 2 more quick points. JSC's past failure to communicate parental complaints about JSC to school officials was unacceptable. The recent policy change that now requires JSC immediately to communicate concerns is a good move. It should be amended to require the sharing of those
3 minutes
complaints
is expired.
with
Thank
all
you.
parents. Parents can't keep their children safe if the risks they're exposed to are kept secret by the city.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Courtney Yakovanis. And that is followed by William. I cannot read this last name. It begins with an M.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ellie Acus, and I am a 3rd grade student at Mount Alvernia Academy. I live on 20 Carrodden Road. Taking the bus is one of my favorite parts of the day because I can sit and talk to my friends. It is also good for the environment, and I'm not late for school. Please vote to keep the bus for me and my friends. Thank you.
And I'm Courtney Yakovonis. I also live at 20 Carrodden Road. I'd like to thank all the committee members for notifying us of the issue of potentially eliminating the private school buses and encouraging active dialogue on this important topic. Newton School's transportation budget is roughly $4 million, but only 5% of that goes towards private school transportation. It's a small fraction of the budget, but it is significant. Private school busing impacts over 150 students across several independent and faith-based schools in the community of Newton. It provides safe, reliable, and effective transportation, but its indirect impact is far wider than that. This decision impacts anyone who is on the Newton City roads during peak commute hours in the morning or the afternoon. The proposed changes to eliminate the private school busing is driven by complaints about bus overcrowding and lack of timeliness. By adding 150 cars to the Newton City roads during peak commute times, the school committee will be exacerbating, not reducing these issues. But more importantly, private school is not just a convenience, it's a right protected by the Massachusetts State Law, Chapter 76, Section 1, which entitles private school students to the same transportation rights as public school students within the district. I know we will spend the rest of the meeting debating what is and isn't required by law, what is meeting versus exceeding the legal obligation, whether the distance measured should be to the student's home, to his assigned public school, or to his in-district private school, and whether a private school in Newton City limits, within Newton City limits, but in a different ward should be considered in or out of boundary, and whether the fact that a minority of out-of-zone public school students being denied bus transportation precludes private school students from the bus. But before we get to all of these debates, I ask that you think back to why Massachusetts General Law 76, Section 1 exists, why transportation for schools is so important that it shouldn't matter whether a student goes to a public or religious or private school within the district. And I also ask that you consider whether the benefits of the proposed solution really outweigh the costs.
You have 30 seconds.
The proposed elimination of private school routes is in the name of efficiency, but this plan overlooks that there's different schedules between public and private schools. All of the morning and the majority of the afternoon routes for private schools start and end at times that don't create significant conflict with high school and elementary public school schedules, or which enable a single bus to serve both populations. For instance, Bus AB, which serves Schechter, then Ainger, then Newton South, then MAA, then Schechter, and then Newton North. I encourage the committee to explore all alternative solutions like more rigid bus pass enforcement, parking buses on school property to reduce daily rental rates, or increasing bus pass fees for all students not mandated by for free transportation by the law. The entire cost of private school transportation, $240,000, would be generated by a $100 increase in the bus pass fee.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes is up. Thank you. Thank you, Ellie. The final speaker in person tonight is William. I'm apologizing, I can't read the handwriting. Oh,
William, can you
Now
tell us how to say your last name?
Moran.
Moran.
Welcome.
Okay, thanks, buddy. See, now I feel bad.
Good evening. My name is William Moran, and I live at 12 Marion Street in West Newton. I am a proud second grader at Mount Alvernia Academy. By riding the bus to and from school, I am saving the environment. Please allow my brother and I to continue to ride the bus. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, William. We have three virtual commenters this evening: Jesse Champion, Liron Walsh, and Yale May. So if Stephen, you could promote Jesse first.
Am I on here?
Yep, we can hear you, Jesse.
Great, thank you. I'm Jesse Champion. My address is 61 Eddy Street in West Newton. I would like to address some transportation concerns with the hope of also providing some ideas for solutions. Regarding the investigation into the kidnapping allegation, Anna Nolan's recent district update, which was put out 9 days after parents found out about this indictment in the news, there are still several issues. She said that the issues reported in the indictment were believed to be limited to NECP. Why? Is it a result of a lack of available data, or is there data to support this claim? This is key information that was not shared, and families at all schools remain very concerned. She also said we've provided information when and where necessary during the investigation. When I personally asked the police department why the follow-up was not done with children who have ridden with Mr. Voss in the past, I was told that MPS provided them with a list of all families affected, and thus they thought they had followed up with everyone. A very flustered sergeant said they were realizing that day that it was not the case. How did MPS determine which families were affected? Because one of my kids rode with him last year, and I've heard from lots of other families in the same position, and none of us were notified. How do you know that one or more of the children he has driven in the past decade hasn't had relevant experiences? Discounting past experiences further silences other potential victims. She passed blame on at one point in this as a flaw in end-to-end ride accountability, and this is flawed logic. Vans are regularly late, and parents aren't contacted if the van is late. A 15-minute delay on cameras, even with parents waiting to receive their child, may not result in a call to the van company to report something is amiss. If parents had access to a GPS monitoring system to view their child's van progress in real time, it would decrease risk and build trust with families who are frankly scared. Another way we reduce risks is through in-person van monitors. This can provide a checks and balances system while ensuring that our students remain safe on the vans. It's not uncommon for monitors to not be provided due to driver shortages, though. What solutions are being pursued to address this? It's encouraging to see a new formal reporting system for concerns and issues with transportation, and I think it would be beneficial to send information to all families on how to do that reporting so everyone is aware that they can. Keeping track of all levels of concern should be a high priority. Some major offenses can be prevented by noticing patterns in minor offenses. And while we've not seen this level of harm in recent years, there are certainly incidences of students being verbally assaulted and threatened, which were reported to both JSC and MPS, and those drivers remained employed. So I would like some clarity on what's the threshold for driver misconduct and the protocol for the consequences of that. We have a great deal of doubt as to the ability of current protocols to protect these vulnerable students from a range of inappropriate behaviors and a great deal of mistrust given the handling. Please.
Jesse, your 3 minutes is up.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you. Next virtual speaker is Liron Walsh, followed by Yale May. Stephen, do we have Liron Walsh?
He's here. He's joined by phone, though, so I don't know if he's having some problems.
Okay, should we maybe go to the next speaker?
He says he can't unmute.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, Stephen, is that something you can control? Can you unmute?
I can't. I've already asked him to unmute, but I can't do anything else. It's got to be on his end.
Okay, so go ahead.
If possible, if you could actually write out your statement and email it to the committee as well, it will go into the public record and we'll be able to hear what you would have said.
Okay. Why don't we go to Yale May right now, and then we'll see if we can resolve the issue after that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yael May. I live at 25 East Boulevard Road in Newton, Massachusetts. I am a state government employee, and I moved to Newton 5 years ago from California with my family. When choosing Newton, an important part of our decision was we wanted a place with active civic life for our family, as well as Jewish day schools in Newton, because that's an important part of our family. When making this decision, an important part of that decision was the fact that Newton offered buses for Newton residents to go to private schools in Newton. It's something that we made a decision on, and it's something that we continue to rely on today. As a Newton resident, I'm very grateful for this. And as a working mother, I rely on this to be able to both do my job and make sure my 9-year-old gets to school and comes back to school. It's a part of his day that he really enjoys. And without it, I'm not sure how our family would be able to have 2 working parents and get our children to school. There are 102 Schechter students who currently rely on Newton buses. That's more than 1/4 of the school community. When families make decisions about schools, a big part of that is logistics, and a huge part of logistics are the buses. I thank everyone for their consideration, and I wanted to express a personal story of the great impact that this bus has on our life, how grateful we are for having it, and how we really hope it will continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's, I guess, Stephen, check and see quick if Mr. Walsh is able to share his comment, and if not, we'll have to move on. And if he could email the comment to the committee, that would be probably the best course of action.
He said he was going to try to rejoin, but I don't see him yet. Oh, wait, let's try one more thing. He's back. Let's see if we can get him to go. I did get him back in, but he's still not seeming to unmute.
Okay, still does not work. All right, Mr. Walsh, if you could please email your statement to the committee, it will be part of the public record. But we'll have to move on. That does conclude our public comment period, and we will move on to the superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. It's been a very busy couple of weeks. Wanted to just update the public on a few multi-year goals coming to fruition this week for the Newton Public Schools. First, we've opened our data dashboards to our educators that combine both literacy and math benchmarking for all students in grades K through 8. And this is a first step in also sharing these assessments with families. So just last Friday, our iReady literacy reports went home to families, and we're having those important community dialogues to make sure that families understand what we have sent home, and also just that first step towards increasing transparency so parents can track how their students are doing as they develop as early literacy, early readers, and early mathematicians within our system. This will be just a first phase of other assessment sharing and curriculum development led by Dr. Gina Flanagan and our team here in the curriculum office and at the high schools. So we're very excited about that. Our English as a second language department has also implemented both STAR Math and STAR Reading. So we are piloting a different reading assessment with our ELL students so that we can track their progress throughout their time in Newton as well. As you know, if you have a student in K-8, you receive the Friday report on iReady. In the winter, after the winter benchmark, you will also receive math scores for fall and winter benchmarking so that you can also see your students' development over time within the year. There are videos on our website under what's an Emerging Parent Academy page, and that will be chock full of resources for parents to train themselves on lots of different aspects of the Newton Public Schools. So look for that webpage soon. We're very excited to launch that because we want parents to understand all of the practices we employ to track student progress, and this is just one beginning step towards doing that. Also soon, the committee and the community will hear about the math curriculum review and audit, which is underway. The entry plan for Gina Flanagan, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, is coming soon to this meeting, and she and I will be presenting to the citywide PTO tomorrow evening to answer questions about the new literacy program and to also share with our PTO presidents what is coming in our next updates for assessments and curriculum. And I'm also pleased to say that Thrive 24, our first ever full day of professional learning for our district, will be held on Election Day, November 5th. I've shared the offerings with the community, and we had a flurry of signups over the last week so that staff can receive professional development that they want on that day. We had limited time to scale this event due to the late June negotiation of this day, but we have over 375 different workshop series for our educators, and our educators deserve that, and we're very excited to offer it. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does any member have a question or comment for Dr. Nolan? On Ping?
Thanks. Very happy to hear all these development regarding the assessment. I think that's unprecedented in the recent history of MPS. And I'm particularly excited about the math curriculum now and an audit, and very eager to hear the results. And also I checked the iReady information video, was very excited to learn something more. And I'm just wondering if as school committee member, do you think we have a chance to see the real demonstration? And if you're concerned about individual students, sensitive information, we can have executive session to, I just want to see the real thing. So when parents have some concern, ask about questions, at least we know what they are seeing that. And lastly, about Thrive 24, I checked the list, incredible, incredible. I'm wondering, is it open to public or just to staff?
Just to staff.
I like to attend some sessions, but okay, that's fine, but wonderful. I'm so happy you can put this wonderful list for the experts, teachers, staff, and outside, organization all contribute to this. Thanks.
Thanks, On Ping. Any other questions or comments for Dr. Nolan? Okay.
We were thinking of having a brown bag lunch to educate all of the school committee on the new data dashboards, mostly because we're all geeking out and want to show it off to you. But so we'll schedule that soon.
That sounds great. Okay, let's move on to our consent agenda. We have 2 items. There's a memo on some out-of-state field trips, and we have the minutes from our October 7th meeting. Is there anything a member would like to pull for further discussion?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. There's also a memo of a $3,000 gift donation for Thrive 24 from a Fidelity donor advised fund.
Got it.
Okay. Anything a member would like to pull for further discussion? Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda of the 3 items?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Moved by Rajiv. Is there a second? Second by Tamika. Thank you. Let's take a vote. Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2 is yes. Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7 is vacant, Ward 8,
Yes.
and Mayor Fuller is absent. So that's, I was told there'd be no math. Maybe I need an assessment. How many? Thank
Have
you.
have we got an assessment for you?
All right. Let's move on to our agenda items for the evening. We're going to start with a discussion about the JSC transportation incident, with which some people spoke about. I know for pretty much everyone in the community, whether you have a kid who takes special education van services or not, this is a pretty jarring incident for, I think, everyone in the community, and leaves that just kind of takes the ground out from underneath you in terms of what you thought you knew, and what it meant to be safe. I know there's been some frustration in the community about the amount of communication. I can tell you definitively that outside of maybe a relatively insignificant detail or two, no one on this committee knows anything beyond what the public knows. This was a law enforcement investigation that was handled by law enforcement. The NPS obviously cooperated to every extent possible with law enforcement, but at no point were we privy to really any of the information of the investigation, and really at no point, when we even knew of its existence, were we able to speak about it. So I just want that out there, and I understand the frustration of folks in the community. I would certainly feel that as a parent. I felt that as a parent, even in the seat I'm sitting in here. So with that, I guess, Dr. Nolan, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think we're all pretty shaken by this situation. Our transportation office, all educators, all of us just feel deeply worried about it. I want to say to you, I'm always open. We are always open as a school system to how we can improve situations. There's one piece that we just can't predict, is when a bad actor is going to do a bad action. And, that is the situation that we're here with tonight. The speaker previous speaking about, how there's no check that we can do for future poor intentions for a person. And if they don't have any criminal history, then we can't predict that. That said, we certainly are looking at all of our ride protocols, everything we can do to make bus riding safe. I can't tell you, and no superintendent should, that she can guarantee the safety of your children at all time. That's just not something that I can guarantee, because the world works the way it works. That said, we can always do better, and we're working with our partners to do that. I think the committee knows, and if the public doesn't, there are limited vendors that provide busing services and that also bid for our contracts. And when we put out what we expect from our vendors, only limited responses come back. For example, Mr. Hurley will tell you that for our yellow bus contract, one company bids for those contracts. And so there is then an interactive dialogue about what we need in those contracts. And in recent years, just to sort of answer one of the questions that has been raised, in recent years, video cameras have been put on all types of transportation that were not previously in vans or buses. And tonight in your MASC resolutions, you're going to see a call for proposal for yet another type of video monitoring to be put on stop signs that swing out onto the arms of buses that they're stopped. So there's always innovations in the field that have been added. I guess what folks really need to hear and understand is that while we have an MOU with the Newton Police Department, we do not have the right to know about criminal investigations and those outcomes. Unlike what we see on television, the police do not share those things with us. It's not, they're not checking in with us and updating us on the outcomes of their investigation. And so talk about feeling helpless during those situations. The conversations reported from the police here by a community member are not ones that have been shared with us or our attorneys, and they wouldn't be. And it's not the scope of our MOU with them, our memorandum of understanding with the police. But we have cooperated in every way, and we are happy to think of new solutions. Regina Moody and I have been meeting with all of our transportation vendors to do a thorough review of what are we doing for safety, what can we be doing better, what can you offer us now. We have a community in crisis, and we want to respond to that crisis. And so happy to answer any questions that the committee has, and certainly we have all been shaken by this situation.
Okay. Is there any questions from committee members? Rajiv, go ahead.
Dr. Nolan, thank you for the update. This has certainly been a situation that's shaken everyone, as Chris said. Families of students with special needs and all families, I think, across Newton. I think there's a lot that could be said. I want to narrow down my comments to really two things. One, which is somewhat anecdotal, is that a number of families, including on the CPAC listserv, have said that their students were transported by the driver who's currently under arrest and did not hear anything. And I understand that in certain cases, based on communications from you, the parents may have been notified, but maybe not received that notification. But in other situations, it seems clear that the driver had transported their children in previous years, potentially at other schools within our school district. And I feel we need to work with the police department or do it independently, but make sure that parents are aware of whether their child was transported by this driver. Parents don't always know the name of the driver. They don't always see the driver very clearly, other than the initial kind of meeting. But I feel like we do owe it to our families to communicate a bit more clearly on that. That's somewhat tactical, but at a broad level, what truly concerns me, and this is not just about JSC and not just about transportation, is that a number of families said that they complained about this driver. And they complained about his interactions with their children. They complained about his general behavior, language he used, etc. And we did have some who said, oh, I was going to complain but didn't. I didn't say anything. But a number of people did. We seem to have had no way of tracking this, of being able to say, oh, there are 5 of this number complaints about a certain individual. This may be a pattern. This may just be someone unsuited to transporting our children, whether or not they're a bad actor to the extent we've talked about here. Which then has me wondering, do we have this in place within our school district for complaints about our own staff? And do we have it in place for our food services provider, for other vendors? And how do we track these things? What do we have contractually? If there's a pattern of complaints about, and again, I'm making this up, someone who serves lunch at one of our schools, do we have any way of knowing that and following up on it? And I don't feel comfortable saying that we do. So I would encourage us to take a broad review across how we record, evaluate, and track complaints, and think about what can be done or what should be done if we start seeing any kind of troubling pattern emerge. I know that's a lot to ask for, but I do think it's critical.
May I respond? So to your first point, so our bus coordinator and I have spent a lot of hours trying to chase down the very information that you're saying about who rode with this person, when and where over a 12-year period. And there's not good records of that. And that is certainly was the first priority of discussion with JSC. And there has been no pushback from them about our expectations moving forward, which is that there will be rock solid ways to track who rode what and when and with whom at all times. It has been my experience in the past that I should always be able to find out who that is for a 7-year period at least. That's typically the record keeping kind of, and I'm looking at Jill just in case she thinks it's 12 years, but I think it's 7. I mean, honestly, there are really no laws governing this type of record, and that's why it's been loose, I think. But we've been crystal clear about what we're expecting moving forward. For our own employees, to your second question, we archive everything. Every complaint that comes in through email or a discrimination complaint or all those pieces are all within our archives, and those are tightly held. What we didn't have here was a complaint that went to JSC didn't necessarily get also transferred to the transportation office. If it came to the transportation office, it would be known by us through our email archives. So we have set up a system with JSC now to track those pieces. That said, I just want to caution the community, just as I would with our staff, there is not a time where complaints are just going to be published to the community at large. As a personnel matter, that isn't never going to happen. That said, if there's an issue, those patterns should be detectable to us. So if there's something ongoing, we should have those records. So we will seek to recreate that here. I can investigate our new food service vendor relative to Chartwell's, but I've worked with Chartwell's in the past, and they do have a system for documenting those pieces. The part that I want to make sure is also clear, though, is since those are not our employees, they're employees of Chartwell, I just want to make sure that we're archiving in the same way. We don't want another JSC situation.
So thank you. That's helpful. And first, I want to, I used food services as an example.
Right, but it's just a new contract.
And
so.
just as a large significant vendor to us, and I know there are others. I'm glad that we are documenting and storing complaints. It would also be good to have a process in place for reviewing them. Again, it's hard to necessarily find a pattern. If every time something comes in, it's recorded, fully understand it's confidential, but we have leadership in our HR department and elsewhere in our legal department who can do these kinds of reviews periodically. Again, just to see if within a confidential record there is something concerning, or within a communication coming in from our food services vendor, from JSC, or whoever else, we're receiving let's say a spike in issues or for a certain employee. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Rajiv. I think that's some good thoughts there. And Tamika?
Thank you. Before I give my my thoughts on this, I did want to flag that we do have a student representative, and I would love to hear her. Hello. Welcome her and hear her explain or introduce herself a little bit. I just want to make sure that's something we do. Moving on to my thoughts, Rajiv, it's as if you and I, once again, were having brainwaves to each other. I think your points are the most salient and important for future. We can't alter a very tragic situation in the past, but there is an obligation once something like this has happened to make sure that your remedial measures are well thought out and comprehensive, such that they cover a wide array of possible future scenarios. First and foremost being the obligation to track and monitor, and as Rajiv said in his follow-up comment, to then act upon, to have those procedures where you are having systematic periodic reviews of behaviors for employees, whether they are our own employees or a third-party contracted employee. And I think there needs to be a duality for that type of review. It's not just JCS who has to conduct a periodic review about complaints and have an escalating, I don't know, a pattern or a protocol that says 3 strikes, you're out, whatever it is. There's also a similar obligation on the part of NPS because it's our students who are being transported and potentially harmed by behavior that is unacceptable. So I lift up Rajiv's points and agree wholeheartedly that that's the direction we need to go. I also commend your quick action after learning about this incident and following up and making sure that we are trying to close those gaps that have now been exposed. I think, again, we're all in a bit of a shell-shocked, dismayed posture as to this happening. But again, it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we're closing those loopholes and doing everything to preserve the students and listen to parents who did lodge complaints, who were doing the right thing and flagging behavior that was unacceptable. So we need to have a process where we are listening and being able to respond and act. And we're certainly expecting JCS or ASC to do that, to follow up as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Tamika. Any other comments or questions? Okay, so I think it's probably fair to say this will, be a bit of an evolution as we continue to think about procedures. It's a perpetual process of ensuring that we're doing everything we can to, provide the safest possible environment. Yeah, Rajiv, go ahead.
If I could add one more thing.
Sure.
And I think Dr. Nolan is already working on this. To the extent that additional information is available as the investigation proceeds, moves towards a trial. We got very little notice from the DA's office prior to the announcement being made. And I think we acted very quickly as soon as we had that information, but to the extent that we can continue collaborating with the Newton Police Department and be able to share information with the community, that would be great. Because, and I, fully understanding that some things cannot be shared by the Newton Police Department, but anything that can, any communication that's going to go out, making sure that we, using our new communication platforms, can also get that information out with additional resources, supports for families, students that we have in place. Right? And I know you've been doing a lot of that. I just think it would be incredibly helpful to the community.
Yep.
I also just want to say that we've reached out through our liaison, Lieutenant Henriksen, for community policing, just to access the resources that the district attorney's office has. So as I've become more absorbed into this situation, they do have trained professionals who work with these types of situations. And unfortunately, we're not the only community who's had a situation like this. And so they do have resources and folks that can come and speak to the community. And so I'm trying to arrange that with the Newton Police. So families have someone to talk to who has had experience with these matters. And that might just help. I mean, there are some questions that we may not be able to answer through the course of this, but that doesn't mean we still don't want to provide support for our families who are wondering. I certainly would be feeling that way as if I were a parent. So I'm still working on that. Please know that the arraignment is October 25th, so we're going to hear about this again. But there's no new information that we have since the announcement of the indictment.
Okay. All right, let's move on then to the next discussion item of private school transportation. So I'm sure, as all the members recall, this was discussed back in the spring. I believe it was in April. And I think the consensus among the committee was it was not something to act on at that point in time for two reasons. Number one, there was still a lack of some information and understanding about what our obligations are. And number two, it would have been just very late in the year to notify folks if the committee were to go to limit the busing of private school students. That that would be a really difficult thing for folks in the community who were counting on that, planning on it, had their kids enrolled, made their deposits, all with the assumption that that busing would be there. So at that point in time, we set a goal for rediscussing this back in October, so that we can make a more informed decision, and if the policy were to change, that it would be done with enough notice time for anyone attending one of those schools affected. So I guess with that, we have a memo from both Liam and Regina Moody, our Director of Transportation, and a separate memo from Jill Murray Grady, our General Counsel. So I guess maybe we can just start with Liam. Regina, do you want to lay out the situation? And then Jill, maybe you can provide some commentary on the legal analysis.
Only if I can do it in like a sportscaster's type way.
Sure. So thank you. Good evening, school committee. So joined by Regina Moody, our Director of Transportation. So we brought this up, I think, as the chair mentioned. So we have been transporting private school students within Newton for a long time. And we've given a list here. Those students, those buses are actually used as part of our tiered system. So not exclusively the private school riders, they drop there, but then they're used at different routes. The piece that we've given a kind of just an update of the ridership levels and the number of buses that are used that then are used at other routes. So this is actually, we're up a little bit from last year. We're about 151 riders. We've given just a kind of a small chart of what these are. The majority of our students are going to Solomon Schechter, the upper and lower campus, but we've got a small number of riders at a number of other schools that travel through Newton. And I think what Regina can talk to you a little bit about is that we're at a position that we're basically needing to add buses now to our current fleet. Newton North, we're at a point that we're actually not allowing some students to register for the bus. So this is impacting obviously Newton Public School students, and what we wanted to do last year and bring to you obviously now is to contemplate what we're doing for the private school students, which we believe is more than we're doing for our public school students. A couple of other kind of quick facts that I just wanted to throw out there is that we have approximately, the school committee asked last year, how many students, I think you understand our policies, within the zone will transport you to your districted school for our public school students. We have approximately 350. That's kind of the average number of students that go to schools. We used to call it out of assigned, so they are going to schools outside of their zone district. And Newton does not transport those students. They have to get there themselves. We had done some analysis last year looking at that and believed we would need 9 or 10 buses to transport those students. So if we were to kind of do the same as we were doing with our private school students, we would need to add that to our fleet. Again, each bus is approximately $118,000 to $120,000 a year, so there would be almost $1 million of incurred cost to try and do that. So I did check in with a few other neighboring communities. I checked in with Wellesley and Weston. They are not providing transportation to private school riders in their community. Lexington said the same thing. Brookline said the same thing. So Cambridge is as well. Cambridge said that, and checked in with them. So Regina, just anything kind of on the practical front from your side, what we're doing that I missed there?
No, you did great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. With that, happy to any questions or just turn it over to Jill.
Yes, I wrote a memo just with I tried to keep it brief, analysis of what the legal obligations are the school committee's legal obligations under the applicable law in terms of transportation, particularly as it applies to private school students. I don't want to walk through the memo per se. I can cut to the chase and then answer any questions or any nuances that may not be crystal clear in there, but at the end of the day, the law that we're governed by, Statute 76, Section 1, prior to the amendment of Chapter 663, which is where it gets a little bit of a legal rabbit hole. I tried to make it as clear as possible, but it's as clear as mud for people who don't know what they're looking for. Is the same rights and privileges, and to the same extent. And what we currently do is we transport students within their zone. How many zones are there? 15?
15 elementary schools, 4 middle school, 2 high school.
Right. And so just by the sheer nature of Newton being as large as it is and having a handful of private schools, it results in students who are getting private school transportation are going well beyond what the distance would be to their zone school. And that's the yardstick measure that's been established by courts at this point, is the same distance that a student would be entitled to transportation based on the school's policies, or unless it's 2 miles, but Newton Public Schools provides transportation significantly less than 2 miles to students to their zone school. And so the distance to that, there may be a very small handful of students that are getting private school transportation, the private schools that are closer than their assigned zoned public school, but I don't think it's anything that would be more than like three. There we go. And so that's the legal requirement, and that's all I'm here to really weigh in on. There's multiple other factors I know that are at play here. Happy to answer any questions about the legal piece of it. And yes, the last case was early 90s.
Okay, thank you. So as we go through this discussion, number one, I'm going to ask that this is something we do not vote on tonight. I would like us to be able to digest all this, hear from members of the community who might be impacted before we would potentially vote on any motion, at our next meeting at the earliest. So I think there's sort of 2 elements of this. One is are we fulfilling our statutory requirement piece? I think there's the piece of, look, this is, obviously something that we have done as an institution for quite some time. It's something that community members have come to expect. That obviously, I think influences the situation greatly. And then there's the issue of, as it exists today, we are providing a service to private school students that we are not providing to public school students. So for those, like Liam, you said it was 350?
Yes, on average, 350 students.
350 NPS students who are attending NPS schools outside of their assigned school, not for special education purposes. And therefore, we are not providing those folks transportation at any price. It is simply not an option. Okay. I think those are, kind of the same information we were grappling with. I think we have a little bit better handle on the legal piece from Jill now, but why don't I open up to members for comments, questions? Go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could explain why there's such a large number of private school students that don't pay, and what is it with why are there 34 that pay? Like, what is it making? What requires them to pay?
Do you want me to start with the legal backup? So by statute, school committees can do anything greater than, but are required at a minimum to provide transportation for students in K grades, technically age 6, but grades K to 6, that reside more than 2 miles. So that's what's legally required. Other than that, school committees, pretty much every city and town, provides something else, whether it's a 1 mile threshold, which is not what we use, but different thresholds. And so at that point in time, at that point in distance, I guess, that's influencing who's charged and who's not to use a bus.
Right. So we do offer more transportation than what the law requires. K to 6 that live greater than, K to 6 that live 2 or more miles from their districted school, we do it for a fee. So anybody that is going to their districted school and resides more than 2 miles is exempt from the fee for grades K to 6. In other words, 7 through 12 would have to pay.
Yeah.
K to 6 that lives less than 2 would pay, or they can.
And what's the fee that they're charged?
It's $400 for the year.
Okay,
this
so
year.
it's the same as the public school
Same,
students,
correct.
right?
Yep.
And the
It's the
400,
same analysis applies to our public schools. So our
Correct.
public school students K to
Right.
6 that live 2 miles or more don't pay. Neither do the,
Right.
and then, but the private school
The
students.
distances that have been used for the private schools are from their home to their private school. So anybody that basically lives outside of the district that that private school falls in, most of them are exempt from the fee because they're more than
Right.
2 miles.
okay.
And the majority of our private school students that we're transporting are grades K to 8, so there's a very small number that would be paying whether, regardless of the distance.
And even if we were to just say charge all of the private school students and the same that we charge the public, the 400,
I don't think legally we can do that. We have to offer them the same rights and privileges.
I think what you're getting at is, I think the standard applies to the distance to the public school they're entitled to attend.
Yeah.
So if they live less than 2 miles, if they live if Horace Mann is in their backyard, but they're going to a school on the south side of
Yeah.
Newton, I think you can charge them.
So-
Under the legal analysis that I have.
right? And so, but if we were charging them 400, the 400 per student just defrays the cost. It doesn't cover the cost of the bus, right? We're still out, you said $1 million, it would be,
Well, that was if you were gonna add almost 9 or 10 bus, so it's about 120 grand per bus right now. So if you were to collect, on 100 students, $400, that's $40,000 total. So that's less than still half the cost of one bus.
right? How many seats does a bus? Sorry to
Legally.
get into the weeds, but I'm
That's
curious.
okay. Legally, they can take 77 passengers and they have 77 seatbelts. All of our buses required by the contract. But that's based on, 13-inch tushes.
Right,
So when you get to middle and high school, you're really talking 2 to a
Right.
seat. So we're talking, high school is 52 is 2 in every seat, 52 and 1 in the back and the last seat by the emergency exit. So we try not to go over 60 with the high schools, but this year our numbers are up for the first time since I've been involved in Newton public school busing, 22 years. For the first time ever, we are turning people away from getting a bus pass.
right.
We're out of space.
And my last question, I think, do we know how it happened that we got into this situation where we are doing this? Was it there one particular thing? Was there one particular opinion? Like, how did this even happen, knowing that
I don't know when it started, but in the legal memo, if you see, the city was actually part of one of the lawsuits when the law was changed at that time. And it sounded like that Newton felt the city at the time either legally obligated or financially under duress, I think was the language that was used in the decision, that they needed, in order to accept the transportation reimbursement at the time, they felt like they needed to comply with that piece of the law. I don't know at what point. I'm fairly certain that when the memo came out to City Solicitor Funk in 2009, that at that point there was obviously some legal opinion there and that it was likely more of a policy decision to keep doing it. So I don't know. I can surmise based on that
Yeah.
history, but I don't. It sounds like has been going on since at least the 80s. I don't know if there was a time where it went away and came back.
Okay, thank you.
I'm looking at Emily. She's nodding her head. She knows everything. So
You're right. As far as I know, from having spoken to the people who were on the school committee at the time.
Yeah, please go ahead, Rajiv.
So quick follow on to Barry's question, actually. So it sounds like given the requirements for whether you need to pay for a bus pass or not, the students who are being transported a greater distance generally are the ones who are not paying for a bus pass. Unlike what happens with NPS, it's if you live on the south side and go to Fessenden, you're definitely more than 2 miles away. It's a long distance to transport someone. But you'd be exempt for paying because you're more than 2 miles away. So it's actually flipped over in terms of the support that families and students get in that way. At least for who
grades
pays for
K
a
to
bus
6,
stop.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to confirm my understanding of that. I have a couple of other questions, but
Yeah, sure, go ahead. And
Tamika, please.
oh, Tamika?
So a technical question on the memo for you, Jill. Your memo refers to city council approval or voting. Why not school committee? Why at that time, and why is that the standard we should be governed by?
I think, well, I'm pretty sure that it's the state funding reimbursement mechanism. And so it's a city or town that has to accept or vote on a statute. School committee doesn't, it's not within their jurisdiction to vote or accept a statute or not, even though it's the school committee that's obligated to provide the transportation. I see where you're going with it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just, the money flows through from the state to the city.
Sure.
And that's how the scheme is.
That's one place I was going. The other place I was going was if the school committee were to make the decision not to offer this service, and then the city councilors voted to do it. That sets us up into this very interesting, see Anna waving her hand.
So you mean votes to accept this, chapter
Correct.
663. It's
Correct.
a very particular
Correct.
thing, yeah.
So that would be a interesting predicament.
So in Natick, my prior town, there was just such a division of transportation provisions. And in that, the school system voted to do X amount and then was going to charge families fees to make up the deficit. The town meeting voted to create a transportation stabilization fund, not unlike our education stabilization fund, which was funded separately for this purpose. Now, they did not transport private school folks, but to your point, this is a division that sometimes cities and towns make.
That's helpful. Helpful, though not not at all reassuring. I guess my questions around this particular issue in front of us, and Chris, I think you said May or April was when we talked about this. I'm going to go back to last fall, I think, Liam, when you submitted the memo requesting, and you and Regina, I'm sorry, you requested that we authorize an additional bus for private school. And I remember the language within that memo that we were providing a service that was above and beyond what we would offer public school students in a like or similar position, those who were in out of assigned districts. From their assigned districts, they were choosing to elect to go, their student went to a different district. That we were doing this, and that was putting not only financial strain on the district, but it was also causing us to have some crowding issues and capacity issues on the buses and such. I remember at that time that I had some questions, which then sparked a larger conversation. And much of the information that we were kind of grappling with is here in the memo. I don't think that any of us would have imagined at that time that we have 350 such out of assigned district Newton Public School students who are transporting their kids from one school to another school on their own, and that we have 151 private school students who are accessing something very similar without with only 34 of those being paid riders. I think those numbers are very much disproportionate, and if it was a situation where we could pay the $118,000 to $120,000 for an additional bus, and certainly if we could afford those 9 additional buses at $118,000 or $120,000 to make an equal service to the out of assigned district NPS students, that represents a lot of money. Either way you swing it, that's more money than we currently have. And so I think none of us wants to be in a position where we're accused of being callous or, just unfeeling about a need and transporting kids to their schools. But there are real practical concerns about what this district can sustain in a rational, sustainable financial way. And then there are real issues about what our NPS students can also demand of us because we're doing this above and beyond system. So those are some of the things I was struggling with then that I'm still struggling with now, that I don't know if the other members are also thinking along those lines as well. I yield for now.
Yeah. Rajiv?
So at the risk of oversimplifying this, I'm thinking about it along 3 lines. Okay. One is the legal line, and Jill, thank you. The memo was very helpful, especially to a non-lawyer like me, and kind of laid out what we have to do, given that we haven't, as a city, adopted, if that's the right term,
Accepted. I think that's not the
accepted,
word, but yeah, similar. Yeah.
the provision 663. So we are clearly doing more than we are required to at this point. The lines along which I'm thinking, one is the legal line, and I feel like, so this is a bit of a question for you, Jill. I feel like we're actually opening ourselves up in legal terms to the families with 350 students who don't receive transportation, because there is potentially a case to be made that if we're providing it to another set of families and not to them, that there is a distinction being made between those 2 groups of students that shouldn't be there.
I mean, I don't want to opine on all potential legal claims that can and can't be made. What I will say is those public school students are entitled to and would be provided the legally required transportation to their assigned zone school. Like that's right. A privilege. I don't want to say privilege, but that's an option that we have as Correct. Newton, particularly being as large as we are, that is afforded to students and families for various reasons, with the condition that if they want to go outside of their zone and there's room, there's all kinds of factors that are made that don't involve me about if a student can do that. But that's one of the things, but they would be given their legal obligation, their legally obligated transportation, and they're entitled to that, to their zone school.
So perhaps it's more fairness.
It might be less
obligation.
of a legal, but a more of a, because I guess there'd have to be some right that's being not provided or some sort of illegal discriminationary type of thing. And I'm not sure being a public school student is considered to be that in that category. But I do think those are concerns that people have raised, right? Like for various reasons.
Yeah, so that's one piece of it. The other is financial, which we've talked about a little bit, and I feel again is laid out quite nicely. Thank you. And then the final one is efficiency. So if we were to have a consistent, a consistent structure in place for private school students and public school students in Newton, is that going to help ease some of the strain on our busing? It may not necessarily take buses away, was the I think the last update we had, but will it ease anything?
Yeah, it wouldn't save us any buses. We wouldn't be able to decrease the number, but right now we are in a position where we need additional buses. One's not going to do it. We're talking a couple, could be 2, could be 3 to solve all our problems. We would love to keep doing private school students at the capacity we do now. if we were to reduce it, there are areas that we can move things around and fix a lot of the problems that we're having with the public school ridership right now, to the point where we might be able to get by without adding any.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
You're welcome.
Good for now.
Okay, thank you. Can I just ask a couple clarifying questions for the moment? The 350 NPS students who are attending outside of their assigned school, equating to 9 or 10 buses. I think I know the reason for the answer to this, but that seems like a really low ratio of students to buses. And I'm assuming that's just the nature of these students are crisscrossing the city in every which way. And it's not like you can put in a route that's just going to take all the kids from the south side to the north side, and east, west, vice versa. That's the logistical challenge there.
Absolutely. When you talk 15 elementary schools, if you've got kids from all 15 crisscrossing the city, picking up all parts of Newton, going to all different directions, you can't really share those buses, especially given the fact that then someone has to be dropped off very early and someone has to be picked up really late, and we'd have to have a mechanism for coverage for these young students at these schools when they're waiting for school to begin or their bus to arrive after school. So you're talking buses that need to be more timely all over the city, and then you've got your secondaries on top of it.
Okay, so in order to, if we were to say, let's provide, the full level of service that we provide to NPS students, same as we provide private students, as a baseline, you're saying we need 2 or 3 more buses as it is to run the system in a, let's call it an acceptable manner.
For current,
yes, in the status quo. And then if we were to offer the same service to NPS students we're offering to private students, that would potentially equate to another 9 or 10 buses on top of those 2 or 3 buses. So we're looking.
Yeah, that's an estimation.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, we're talking big numbers.
Yeah, we're talking somewhere in the $1 million to $1.5 million type increase in that line item.
Yeah, we'd have to do a much more in-depth look at where these students live, what schools they're going to know what's going to work in which direction.
Yep.
But you're talking 18 square miles, 21 public schools. It's a lot.
Yeah, and that would be offset by only something like a couple $100,000 of fees.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you just think about the number of schools and the number of machinations you could have from even the 15 elementary schools, some student from Horseman going to Memorial Spalding, some from Memorial Spalding going to Horseman, going to the school, you would be pinging around the whole city so you would not be very efficient with your ridership, and you would need a lot of buses just to try and get these students around.
Okay, that answers the question. I just wanted to confirm that my understanding that would be correct. And then Liam, can I just, you mentioned some districts who do and do not do this. I think you said Wellesley, Weston, Brookline, Lexington, and Cambridge do not. Is that correct?
I heard through someone else that spoke with the current interim superintendent Cambridge, who says they aren't transporting any private school students. I don't have any information as to why, how, or what they're doing in terms, but that they currently, that was the representation, but I don't have it in writing. So
okay. And I know, I believe you said either this was a previous conversation or you said it tonight, Waltham does to one of their parochial schools and Needham does to their, to St. Joe's.
So Needham does to St. Joe's, but does not do to St. Sebastian's. So St. Joe's is in the center of town, so it may make it easier for them, but yeah, same for Waltham, it may be one location.
Okay, thanks. I mean, not necessarily proving or disproving anything, just it was helpful data points to have. Tamika, go ahead. Paul, after Tamika.
Okay. Very quickly, if we follow the applicable state law and meet our legal requirements, the number of transportable students or students who are eligible to be transported to their private religion or private school would be 3, down from 151. Is that correct?
That's what our numbers show for this year, correct?
So of the 3 students, would there be capacity on an existing other type of transportation route, not bus, a van, would there be a capacity to absorb those without adding additional costs for even an additional van?
We would not put them on a van.
Okay,
They're
same-
strictly for our special ed students under contract.
I follow.
Um,
So same question to
For a bus, we could look at the logistics. It would depend on the timing, but it's possible. You know, that's something we could certainly look at absorbing the three. I believe they're, all in the Memorial Spalding area. So something to look at for sure.
Thank you. Good, Chris.
Thanks. Paul, go ahead.
Thank you, Chris. Question for Anna. When a family wants a student to go to an out-of-zone school, what's the process for that? Clearly, there has to be space in that school, correct? And is there a list of possible reasons that the family has to choose from?
They do not have to disclose reasons, they just disclose choices. And it depends on enrollment for that time period about whether we can actually house them there, and that does have bearing on transportation lines.
Just from your experience, what kinds of reasons do you think, if we looked at that group of 300 students, 350 students, what kinds of reasons would come up for someone to want to go out of zone?
Did you want to add something, Liam?
I just wanted to add that form that families fill out does specifically call out and says, you know, transportation is not included. So that's on that form that
That was my next question, but just so people understand, Dr. Nolan, what reasons can you think of that 350 students would want to go out of zone?
Go ahead, Jill.
So, hearing my angel over here whispering in my ear, confirming, because I'm not part of that process, but have seen some, we do ask for a reason, because sometimes if there's limited spots, there are certain priorities that may take place. These are decisions that are made similar to buffer zones, but it's ones I know I've seen are a family lives in one part of Newton and the student starts, and then they move to another part of Newton, and they want to keep their student wants to stay where they are. What are some others? Siblings, maybe. Sometimes a parent might work across town and for whatever reason may choose to drive their child and they want the student.
They might have two family household, those types of things.
And the key question there, which is the one Liam answered, is that they know when they're applying that they'll be responsible for their own transportation, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Rajiv, go ahead.
In terms of neighboring communities or other communities in Massachusetts that do not provide the service at all, do we understand the basis for that?
I checked in with a few of them. They, you know, most of them said, no, we don't do that. They didn't, you know, some of these things, again, like us, has probably been going on. This has probably been their practice for some time. Lexington, it looks like that was part of it, and potentially that suit, maybe they stopped after that. I'm not quite sure. So I don't have the reasons for why they may or may not have done that.
I would just say the same thing. There wasn't a lot of information available. We didn't do a deep dive. We just wanted to do a survey of kind of what people, and I always say this whenever we're talking about laws and regulations and everything, and Newton is always very unique in that we're large, but we're not a city of Boston. So we have various schools, including probably more private schools than almost any other city in the state. We also have 15 districts within our school. So we're all often a standalone.
Go ahead.
A very quick follow-up, which again, I thought I saw in the memo. This only applies to recognized schools, correct? So the school committee has to have recognized these schools on an annual basis in order for there to be any eligibility here.
I'm not sure it's an annual basis. Once they've gotten the approval process, they're approved.
Just one
Okay, I
time.
thought we had to renew that, but apparently we don't.
Not that I'm aware of.
Only if they revise their program.
Got it. Thank you.
Paul has his hand up. isn't he?
Oh, Paul, go ahead. Thank you.
I'm staring.
Thanks. Apologies for not bringing this up before. Just to make it clear, if we were to vote to change the current policy so that we wouldn't be transporting those schools in our yellow buses, that would still leave the opportunity for those schools, those private schools, to contract directly with transportation providers for those students, right?
That's my understanding of how a lot of them work. Particularly within cities and towns and outside of cities and towns where students go to schools that are in a neighboring town private school. There's all types of private transportation options that the school, I believe, contracts. And I think it probably depends on the school, but I know that to be.
So it seems to me that this comes down to a rather simple question, perhaps, of who should be paying to transport those students if they need to be transported. Whether it should be the Newton Public Schools offering a service that we don't offer to our own students and paying for it, or whether those school systems, those individual schools, should pay to offer that service to their students.
I've spoken to some of my counters in some of our neighboring districts, and I think there were two. Liam had mentioned Needham transports to one of their bigger private schools and not to the other. And it's my understanding that other school provides the busing. Solomon Schechter does provide some busing. They contract out and bus students in from other districts. Last I knew, they had 3 buses coming from Metro West, out towards the Boston area, out towards Waltham, Lexington area. So some of them are already doing that.
Regina, I mean, one of the parents brought up the issue of energy efficiency of people driving individual cars if they didn't have a yellow bus available. I have to wonder, when a yellow bus is delivering students to a private school, is it as full in terms of the number of students riding it as we would typically have? In other words, might there also be an efficiency in that private school using a smaller bus for the clientele they need to deliver?
Yeah, that would definitely be more efficient. Solomon Schechter does have a higher ridership. They do have higher numbers. I feel like they're up a little bit this year. The other schools that are combined, Mount Alvernia, Jackson, Newton Country Day, their numbers are very low. Like along the lines of some of our lower elementary ridership. 10.
But we would be transporting using a full-size yellow bus.
We do.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Other questions? Okay, so I think we'll take this back up at our next meeting. Just so all the members are aware, as I did last spring, I did reach out to all the heads of schools at every private school I'm aware of in Newton. Obviously, we've heard from some of those families tonight. We've received some emails from some of those folks. I think, you know, we want to have the time to make sure we think this through. Is there specific follow-ups that any members would like to request from Jill or Regina or Liam? Yeah, go ahead, Barry.
I have one question regarding what, and it might, maybe it does require follow-up. Depending upon how we vote, would it then have to then still be looked at by city council?
No, this
Okay.
currently, we're not bound by that law. The question Tamika had is, what would change us, our legal obligations? Our legal obligations would be a very discreet and would be somewhat surprising in that, 30 years after the fact, city council takes an official vote to accept chapter 663 in
Okay.
retrospect.
All right, I just wanted to make sure I understood.
Okay, so I think we have a good lay of the land of the issue in front of us now. Thank you, Jill, for the memo. That was really helpful. I thought that was very clearly laid out. I did find it helpful to read the actual opinions in Essex and the two Lexington cases. That, to me, legally made it like it was a kind of light bulb went off to read that. So I would encourage other folks to take a look at that as well before our next meeting. So I think that's it for now. And then, if anyone does have any questions that pop up, please reach out to Liam, Regina, or Jill directly with that question before our next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's on the docket for our next scheduled meeting, so that's November 4th. Thank you.
Resolutions.
Oh, thank you. Okay, next item, we have some budget adjustments and an update on hiring for the current year.
So I think the memos speak for themselves. I just wanted you and the community to know that I would be coming forward to you whenever there was anything unexpected that occurred that has a monetary impact. That means it revises the amount of FTEs that we said we would be employing this year. You're used to this for kindergarten aides in the summer, but there were a few other revisions and some apparently undetected secondary ed movement that is now documented here. So we don't expect, I expect one other potential additional change at this time, but we're still assessing it. The new elementary school schedule plus an influx of brand new newcomer ELL students in 2 of our schools at the elementary level mean that we are challenged staffing wise because there has to be a newcomer class at K 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in each of those buildings. And so we won't be using operating money for that. We'll be using our Educatius fund. That is our international travel student fund that has been established for the use of funding ELL revisions in the past. I might read your faces to say that maybe you didn't know that either. So I will bring you any of those revisions should they come about. But there has been a past practice in the district of using those Educatius funds to address ELL costs, which many districts do. So this is the first time that I've had to make a revision to the roster of staff, and I just wanted you to know what the changes were. These changes may not be permanent. As you know, they are enrollment driven. And as we reorganize under our new MTSS system, we are finding efficiencies. So I'll come back to you and let you know.
Okay. Any questions? The only question I apologize for not bringing this to you before. Do you happen to know offhand the size of the kindergarten classes where we're adding the incremental aid position, just as it relates to?
Yes, they're in the 20s.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. We'll move on to the MASC resolutions, and we need to vote to elect a delegate for the MASC conference. I sent everyone an email about this earlier this week, and the response was overwhelming from committee members putting up their hands to volunteer for a lovely couple days in Cape Cod.
In November.
In November. Beautiful time of year. So I guess I think there's two ways we can go about this. What I would recommend is, as opposed to us going through all the individual resolutions, we empower our delegate to vote their conscience in the best interests of NPS in representing us at the conference. We still do need a volunteer, however. So if at this time anyone is willing to represent the committee at the MASC conference, that would be greatly appreciated.
Before I raise my hand, by necessity, as I have done for the last 2 years, actually 3, but that was previous, before this current school committee, I just want to make a plug for this conference. I have found it to be sometimes infuriating, especially during the whole voting part and in terms of the resolutions. But other than that, meeting other school committee members from districts that are wildly different from ours and being able to talk and to find common ground and also hear what issues they're working towards fixing that may be different from ours or things that we haven't thought about, I think is incredibly helpful, particularly for newer members, because there are good sessions that are available not only for newer members. I last year was able to attend a session about collaboratives, which still want to follow up on. In terms of we used to belong to one, we don't anymore. What's the positives? What do districts get from collaboratives? You know, so it's things that are important to school committees that we don't necessarily think of on the regular, but should be on our radar as well. And so it's an opportunity to sort of expand the focus from just Newton to the broader state. So that's my plug for anybody else who might possibly be thinking about going to Cape Cod on a Friday this time, as opposed to it being on Wednesday. Friday means that you can stay overnight and have a nice longer weekend on a cool beach day. Just trying to put it out there for anybody who might be interested.
To sell it.
I'm trying hard.
Anyone convinced by Emily's sale?
I just like to echo to Emily. I went there twice and could be fun and even get the free book written by our 2 MPS colleagues. That's good thing. And also I learned from some other district, they provide the room and board. You can stay there overnight. I said, that's nice. And they all district, Lexington, all district committee members went there. And they had their own, social time. And I really feel a little bit jealousy. I said I went there twice. I even did not get the gas mileage, whatever the.
You're welcome to go again if you want.
but it's fun, and yeah, it's driving not too bad, but weather hopefully is still nice. So I would echo your plea to see if anyone interested.
Okay, well, thank you for that endorsement, non-volunteer.
Absolutely. Well done. I'll do it. Nobody else wants to do it. I will do it. I will represent us again. And I will be very happy to be empowered if the committee does so move to allow me to be empowered. Because there's a lot of change that happens on the floor. And what these look like now is not anything like it's going to look like once they're done.
Assuming that is moved and passes, you have the enduring gratitude of the committee.
This is the last year I'm doing this. I want to be very, very clear. Like, I'm done after this. I'm done.
Rajiv?
I move that we empower Emily to represent Newton Public Schools School Committee at the MASC conference, and I add to that a hope for nice weather on the Cape for that weekend.
Friendly amendment and authorize her to vote her conscience.
Yes, thank you.
Second.
Okay. Moved by Rajiv. Second by Anping. And is there any further discussion?
I would just like to point out, we also need to vote on an alternate. So there's, just saying, there's an alternate. We need to vote for an alternate also.
We'll call a special meeting if we have to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
stay healthy. Uh, any other comments? All right, let's take a vote. Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2 is yes. Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
As someone who has also done this conference in the past, I salute you and appreciate you. Yes.
Ward 5,
Sure.
Ward 6.
Yes.
Ward 7 is absent. Ward 8.
Yes.
And Mayor Fuller is absent. Okay, Emily Prenner, thank you very much for your service to the committee and your community. We very much do. All right, our final agenda item is the for year 26 school year calendar.
Good. Okay. All right. So, in our recent contract negotiations, we did involve the union in a decision where we could start school before Labor Day. So, our attorney Jill is working on a policy to help guide when we start before Labor Day and when we don't start before Labor Day. You are in the unenviable position of having to vote a contract every year that predicts snow days and accommodates all of our new holidays, and is squishy in that way because right now the calendar that is before you assumes an early Labor Day start, so that students would start the 2nd of September this year. Lots of parents have emailed you this week asking for you to move that back by a week. But you also have to consider that this particular spring, if we have snow, you will be having school again right through the end of June. So how long is summer vacation is what you're guarding against. And there's opinions on all sides, start earlier, start later. So it has been the tradition to start after Labor Day. It is the early Labor Day holiday here. So I put together this calendar for you, which starts us on the 2nd, but you have the right to amend it in any way that you would like to amend it. I'm happy to answer any questions, but the new features here are all the holidays that we have now officially recognized through our holiday and homework policies last year are here. Although there's also been controversy about some of those, just so you know. So some of the holidays are lunar based, and therefore there's a range of time. And even the religious officials in the city don't agree on the range of time. So Carolyn and I are doing the best we can to put together a culturally appropriate calendar that respects those dates. We think we're here. Happy to receive any feedback that people have about it. So with that, this is the first draft look at this for you with an early Labor Day start.
And just so we're clear, the early start combined with what is still a pretty late finish is just a function of how the holidays fall, and we're sort of taking a lot of days that we wouldn't in some years where some of those holidays would fall on weekends. All right, is there any questions for Dr. Nolan on the calendar? We'll have to nope. Okay, Paul, go ahead, please.
Anna, is there an expectation of continuing to treat Election Day as a holiday?
So we don't have to do that, but we now have a full day of PD. The way we negotiated it, it said sometime in November in the future. So there are other ways we can accommodate that. In some districts, they have it right after the Thanksgiving holiday. So the kids get a longer Thanksgiving holiday break, but the teachers come back one day earlier. So there are options that we can explore.
But there is the one day that remains somewhat.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's November 4th next year.
So we have received input on both sides of it, but given a 2nd of September start, in terms of what I recall about our discussion about the policy about when to start potentially before Labor Day, right? This doesn't seem to line up with what we had discussed. And what we have here actually seems to be in line with what we had talked about for start dates and what the majority of the community expects in terms of when schools will start. We can't control the weather, contrary to what some people think, but we here can control the start date. So I would just say I'm comfortable with what we have here. I don't know at what point we need to formally vote on it, but it's laid out, I think, in a way that makes sense. And we also, the other thing, we did add Lunar New Year. It happens to fall during a school break, so that hasn't pushed, at least for this school year, has not kind of pushed out the end date.
Yep. Other comments, thoughts? Okay, well, why don't we reserve this for a vote for next meeting? Yeah, we can continue to get any further input. All right, yes, Tamika, go ahead.
Just gonna bug you about our student who had to depart prior to being acknowledged. That's 2 students now. Next time, maybe we can bump that acknowledgement and introduction up, either at the top of the meeting or somewhere prior to their departure.
Noted. Okay, that concludes our agenda for this evening, and we are adjourned.